The evening rush at Le Ciel was in full swing. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of silverware against fine china. Soft jazz played in the background as waiters in crisp white shirts moved between tables with practiced grace. Through it all, Lily hurried from table to kitchen and back again, her feet aching after 6 hours on shift. This wasn't how she had planned her life. At 28, she had once dreamed of music halls and concert stages, not balancing plates of overpriced fish while wealthy people barely noticed her existence. But life had a way of changing plans. 3 years ago, when her parents' car slid off an icy road, everything changed. Suddenly, she became the only support for her teenage sister, and dreams had to wait. "Table 12 needs more water," the head waiter whispered, as they passed in the narrow hallway between dining areas. Lily nodded, already reaching for a fresh pitcher. She knew Table 12 well. It had been seated 30 minutes ago with Robert Winters and his business associates. Winters owned half the tech startups in the city and was known for two things: his billions and his terrible manners. Lily approached the table carefully. 4 men in expensive suits were leaning in, discussing something in hushed, urgent tones. She recognized Winters immediately. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and a watch that probably cost more than her yearly rent. Unlike some regulars who at least acknowledged the staff with a smile or nod, Winters treated waiters like furniture, useful when needed, invisible otherwise. "The water, gentlemen," Lily said softly, reaching between 2 of the men to refill their glasses. They barely paused their conversation about acquisition numbers and market projections. "And Chen is asking for another 15 million before he'll even consider the merger," Winters was saying, gesturing emphatically. His hand collided with Lily's arm just as she was pouring, sending a splash of ice water onto the sleeve of the man beside him. The table fell silent. The man, younger than the others, maybe mid-30s with glasses and an otherwise dry navy suit, jumped slightly at the cold water but quickly dabbed at his sleeve with a napkin. "I'm so sorry, sir," Lily said immediately, her heart sinking. Incidents like this could cost her the job if the customer complained, and she couldn't afford to lose this position. The restaurant paid better than most, and the tips sometimes made the difference between paying bills on time or not. Winters looked up at her as if noticing her existence for the first time. His eyes narrowed. "Do you have any idea what that suit costs?" he asked coldly, though it wasn't even his suit that got wet. "It's really not a problem," the younger man in glasses began, but Winters waved him off. "No, Thomas, it is a problem. We're paying premium prices here for premium service." He turned his gaze back to Lily. "Those clumsy hands of yours belong in a truck stop diner, not a place like this." The comment stung more than Lily wanted to admit. Heat rose to her cheeks, but years of customer service had taught her to keep her expression neutral. "I apologize for the accident, sir," she said evenly, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I'll bring some club soda for the stain right away, and of course your drinks tonight will be complimentary." Something in her response seemed to surprise Winters. Perhaps it was that she hadn't cowered or burst into tears, or maybe it was the quiet dignity in her voice. The voice that had once been trained for projection in concert halls rather than the hushed tones of fine dining. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Lily," she answered, her pitcher still half full in her hands. "Well, Lily," he said, pronouncing her name like he was testing it. "I expect better service for the rest of our meal." She nodded once and turned to get the club soda, feeling his eyes follow her as she walked away. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall for a moment, taking a deep breath. These moments when rich customers treated her like she was nothing were the hardest. They didn't know that she'd graduated top of her class from the local university's music program. They didn't know about the scholarship she'd received to the prestigious Eastman School of Music, the one she'd had to decline when her parents died. They didn't know that every night after her shift, she still played her old upright piano in the tiny apartment she shared with her sister, keeping her fingers nimble despite the long hours of carrying trays. "You okay?" asked Miguel, one of the line cooks who'd become a friend over the years. He was plating a perfectly seared steak, his movements quick and precise. "Just another day serving the elite," Lily said with a small smile. "Spilled water on a suit at table 12, Miguel winced. "Winter's table. That guy's the worst tipper and the loudest complainer. Tell me about it." Lily grabbed a small bowl of club soda and a clean cloth. "Better get back out there before he decides I'm not worth the minimum wage I barely earn." The rest of the evening continued without incident. Lily served their meals perfectly, anticipated their needs, and kept their glasses filled without another spill. When they finally paid and left, she was surprised to find that Winters had left exactly 15% tip. Not generous, but not the complete stiff they'd expected. 2 nights later, Lily was surprised to see Robert Winters return to Lucielle. More surprising still, he requested her section specifically. He asked for you by name, the hostess told her with raised eyebrows. Good luck. Winters was alone this time, sitting at a small table by the window overlooking the city lights. Lily approached with professional calm. Good evening, Mr. Winters. What can I get you to drink tonight? He studied her face for a moment before answering. Scotch, neat, and I'll have the filet. As she turned to place his order, he added, And Lily? Sit down for a moment. She froze, turning back slowly. Sir, I'm not allowed to sit with customers during my shift. I just made a rather large donation to this restaurant last year, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I think they can make an exception. Uncomfortable but seeing no graceful way to refuse, Lily perched on the edge of the chair, her order pad still in hand. How long have you been working here? He asked. 3 years, sir. And before that? Lily hesitated, unsure why he was asking or what he wanted. I was in school. Studying what? The conversation felt like an interview, but she couldn't understand the purpose. Music, piano performance specifically. Something flickered in his eyes, interest perhaps. And yet you're waiting tables. It wasn't a question, but Lily answered anyway. Life happens. My parents died, and I became my sister's guardian. She's 17 now. College next year, hopefully. Winters nodded slowly as if confirming something to himself. I'm hosting a charity event at my home next weekend. It pays $300 for the night to serve drinks and hors d'oeuvres. Interested? The amount was nearly triple what she'd make on a good night at the restaurant. Money that could go straight to her sister's college application fees. Yes, she said, trying not to sound too eager. Thank you for the opportunity. Good. Leave your information with the hostess. My assistant will contact you with details. As she stood to place his order, he added, One more thing, Lily. Do you still play? The piano, I mean. When I can, she answered honestly. Not as often as I'd like. He nodded again and opened the menu, effectively dismissing her. As Lily walked to the kitchen, she felt a strange mixture of relief at the extra money and unease about the invitation. Something about the way he'd asked about her playing bothered her. What she couldn't know was that after she left, Winters had immediately texted a friend. Found the entertainment for Saturday. Wait until you see this. A waitress who thinks she's a pianist. Should be amusing. That night after her shift ended, Lily walked the 8 blocks to her apartment instead of taking the bus, saving the fare. The neighborhood wasn't the best, but it was what they could afford. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs, her legs protesting after hours of standing. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. Her sister was asleep on the couch, textbooks spread around her, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating her peaceful face. Lily smiled, carefully gathering the books without waking her. In the corner of their living room stood her most prized possession, an old upright piano that had belonged to her grandmother. It was out of tune in spots and 2 keys stuck occasionally, but it was hers. She sat down quietly and placed her fingers on the cool keys, not pressing down, just feeling their familiar shape beneath her fingertips. She thought about Winter's offer and the money it would bring. Something told her there was more to his invitation than just serving drinks, but she pushed the thought away. $300 was $300, and pride wouldn't pay for her sister's future. With the gentlest touch, she began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune, her fingers remembering what her mind tried sometimes to forget. That once, not so long ago, she had been destined for something else, something more than carrying plates and enduring the condescension of men like Robert Winters Little. Did she know that this chance encounter would soon change everything? The week passed in a blur of double shifts and late nights for Lily. Her sister Zoe had a college interview coming up, and the application fees alone were enough to make Lily's stomach knot with worry. Every extra dollar counted. On Tuesday afternoon, Lily's phone rang with an unknown number. She answered while sorting through bills at their small kitchen table. Hello, is this Lily Reynolds? A crisp, professional voice asked. Yes, speaking. This is Vanessa, Mr. Winters' personal assistant. I'm calling about the event this Saturday evening. Lily straightened in her chair. Yes, Mr. Winters mentioned it to me at the restaurant. The event begins at 7, but staff need to arrive by 5 for briefing. The address is 47 Hillcrest Drive. Do you know where that is? Everyone in the city knew where that was. Hillcrest Drive wound up into the exclusive neighborhood nestled in the hills overlooking the bay. Houses there started at 8 figures. Yes, I can find it, Lily said. Wear black pants and a white button-up shirt. Mr. Winters will provide bow ties and vests for servers. You'll be paid in cash at the end of the night. Vanessa paused. One more thing, Mr. Winters mentioned you play piano. The question caught Lily off guard. I studied it in college, yes. Interesting. That's all for now. Saturday at 5. Don't be late. The line went dead before Lily could ask why Robert Winters would care about her musical background. She set her phone down slowly, staring at the pile of bills. An extra $300 would cover Zoe's application fees with enough left over to fix the leaky faucet that had been driving them crazy for months. Whatever game Winters was playing, the money made it worth showing up. That evening at the restaurant, Lily found herself watching the wealthy patrons with new eyes. She'd be in one of their homes on Saturday, getting a glimpse into a world that seemed as distant as another planet. A world where people like Robert Winters made more money in an hour than she made in months. You look lost in thought, Miguel commented as they passed in the kitchen. Everything okay? I got hired to serve at some fancy party this weekend. At Robert Winters' house, Miguel's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? That guy lives in a palace. I heard he has an indoor pool shaped like his company logo. Lily laughed. I doubt that, but I'll let you know what I see. Just be careful, Miguel said, his expression growing serious. Rich people like that, they sometimes think their money gives them the right to treat others however they want. I know, Lily assured him. I'm just going to serve drinks, make some cash, and get out. Saturday arrived with unusual sunshine for that time of year. Lily spent the morning helping Zoe practice for her college interview, then ironed her white shirt until it was crisp and spotless. At 4:30, she caught the bus heading up toward the hills. The ride took her through neighborhoods that grew increasingly manicured and spacious. By the time she got off at the stop nearest to Hillcrest Drive, the houses were hidden behind gates and tall hedges. She walked the last half-mile uphill, her work shoes already pinching her toes. The Winters estate was impossible to miss. A modern masterpiece of glass and stone perched on the hillside, its windows reflecting the late afternoon sun like mirrors. A security guard stood at the open gate checking names off a list. I'm Lily Reynolds, she told him. I'm working as server tonight. He nodded and pointed toward a side entrance. Staff check-in is through there. Lily followed his directions to a bustling kitchen where a dozen other people in white shirts and black pants were already receiving instructions from a harried-looking woman with a clipboard. You must be the last server, the woman said when she spotted Lily. I'm Grace, the event coordinator. Take a vest and bow tie from that rack, then find Rachel by the bar for your station assignment. The next hour passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Lily was assigned to circulate with champagne as guests arrived, then transitioned to the east wing with hors d'oeuvres. The house was even more impressive inside, soaring ceilings, artwork that looked like it belonged in museums, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the spectacular view of the city below. At exactly 7 o'clock, the first guests began to arrive. Lily fell into the familiar rhythm of service work, moving smoothly between clusters of expensively dressed people, offering champagne with a polite smile. She recognized some faces from business magazines and news segments, tech executives, venture capitalists, and the occasional celebrity. An hour into the event, she hadn't seen Robert Winters himself. Then, as if summoned by her thoughts, he appeared in the grand entryway, greeting new arrivals. He looked different here, more relaxed, more in his element. He laughed at something a guest said, then scanned the room until his eyes landed on Lily. He gave her a small nod of recognition before turning back to his conversation. Something about that look made Lily uneasy, but she pushed the feeling aside and continued working. The party was in full swing by 9, with about 80 guests spread throughout the main floor of the mansion. Lily had just refilled her tray with stuffed mushroom caps when she overheard a conversation that made her pause. So where's this entertainment you promised, Rob? A man in a charcoal suit was asking Winters. You said you had something amusing planned. Winters' lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Patience, David, all in good time. Lily moved away before they could notice her listening, but the exchange left her with a crawling sensation up her spine. What entertainment was Winters planning, and why did he look at her when the man asked about it? She continued serving, moving between the main room and a smaller library where guests had gathered around a magnificent grand piano. It was a Steinway concert grand, glossy black and perfectly maintained, the kind of instrument Lily had only played a handful of times during her studies. Her fingers itched just looking at it, but she kept her attention on her tray and the guests. At 10:30, Grace, the coordinator, appeared at her elbow. Mr. Winters wants all servers to bring the guests to the main room. He's making an announcement. Lily nodded and began gently directing people toward the central space. Within minutes, all 80 guests were gathered, cocktails in hand, looking expectantly at Robert Winters, who stood on the second step of the grand staircase to address them. Friends, thank you all for coming tonight and for your generous donations to the Children's Medical Research Foundation, he began, raising his glass. Thanks to you, we've raised over $2 million this evening. Applause rippled through the crowd. Winters smiled, waiting for silence to return before continuing. Now I promise some entertainment tonight. His eyes scanned the room until they found Lily, standing near the back with her empty tray. And I believe we have someone with us who can provide it. Lily's heart began to pound as Winters beckoned her forward. Confused and embarrassed, she handed her tray to another server and made her way through the parting crowd. This is Lily, Winters announced as she reached him. She works at Le Ciel downtown where she serves overpriced fish to people like us. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. But what's interesting is that Lily here claims to be something of a pianist. The blood drained from Lily's face as she realized what was happening. This had been his plan all along, to put her on display, to create an uncomfortable spectacle for his guests' amusement. He never intended for her to just serve drinks. I believe we have a perfectly good piano going to waste in the library, Winters continued, his voice carrying a challenge. Perhaps Lily would favor us with a demonstration of her talent. The guests turned to look at her with expressions ranging from amusement to pity to second-hand embarrassment. They were expecting her to fail, to fumble through chopsticks or some beginner's piece while they politely hid their smiles behind their champagne glasses. Lily stood frozen, mortification washing over her in waves. She could refuse, walk out right now. But then she'd lose the payment she so desperately needed. And something else kept her rooted to the spot. Pride. The kind of pride her mother had instilled in her. That wouldn't let her cower before people who thought they were better than her just because of the size of their bank accounts. I'd be happy to play something, she heard herself say, her voice steadier than she expected. Winters looked momentarily surprised, as if he'd anticipated more resistance. Then he smiled and gestured toward the library. After you. The crowd followed, a murmur of conversation rising as they filed back into the room with the grand piano. Lily could hear snippets as she walked ahead of them. Poor girl, being put on the spot like that. Rob always did have an odd sense of humor. Probably just knows a few basic tunes. In the library, the beautiful Steinway waited, its lid raised to full stick. Lily approached it slowly, running her fingertips lightly along its edge. It had been almost a year since she'd touched an instrument of this caliber. Her own upright at home, beloved as it was, couldn't compare to this magnificent piece of craftsmanship. The guests arranged themselves around the room, drinks in hand, watching with curious expressions. Robert Winters stood directly across from the piano, his face bearing a smug smile that said he'd already won whatever game he was playing. Lily sat down at the bench and adjusted its height. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes briefly, and tried to remember who she was before life had forced her to put her dreams aside. Then she placed her hands on the keys and prepared to play. The room fell silent as Lily sat at the magnificent Steinway. 80 pairs of eyes watched her with a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and for some, the hungry anticipation of witnessing someone's humiliation. These were people accustomed to being entertained, and Robert Winters had promised them a show, though not the kind they were about to receive. Lily's fingers hovered over the keys. In that suspended moment, time seemed to stretch. The weight of the silence pressed against her ears. She caught sight of Winters leaning against a bookshelf, arms crossed, that self-satisfied smile still playing on his lips. Beside him stood the man he'd been speaking with earlier, David, whispering something that made Winters chuckle. A memory surfaced in Lily's mind. Her piano professor telling her that before every performance, she should take 5 seconds to center herself. "The audience can wait," he'd said. "Those 5 seconds belong to you." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, the faces watching her blurred into insignificance. There was only the piano now, her old friend, her first love. She began to play. The opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the room, gentle at first, almost questioning. A ripple of surprise passed through the audience. This was not the hesitant plinking of an amateur they had expected. Winter's smile faltered. The piece continued, building in complexity. Lily's fingers danced across the keys with the muscle memory that comes from thousands of hours of practice. The notes flowed like water, one moment delicate as rain, the next powerful as a storm. She had chosen this piece deliberately. The ballade was technically demanding, emotionally rich, and impossible to play without years of training. It had been her audition piece for Eastman, the one that had won her the scholarship she'd been forced to decline. As she played, the tension in her shoulders melted away. The room disappeared. The watching eyes no longer mattered. There was only the music, the story it told of hope and longing, of beauty found in melancholy. The guests stood transfixed. Several had unconsciously moved closer to the piano, drawn by the unexpected virtuosity they were witnessing. One older woman in a midnight blue dress had closed her eyes, swaying slightly with the music. Robert Winters no longer leaned casually against the bookshelf. He stood straight now, his drink forgotten in his hand, his expression unreadable. As the piece approached its climax, Lily's hands flew across the keyboard with controlled fury. The technical passages that had once required all her concentration now flowed from her fingertips as naturally as breathing. Years of serving drinks and carrying plates hadn't diminished her skill. If anything, the longing with which she'd missed this, the way she'd cherished her brief moments at her old upright at home, had deepened her connection to the music. The final chords resonated through the room, powerful and conclusive. Then silence. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved or spoke. Then the room erupted in applause. Not the polite, obligatory kind, but genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. Several guests were on their feet. "Brava! Incredible! My God, where did you study?" The questions and praise washed over Lily as she remained seated at the piano, slightly dazed by the response. She hadn't performed for an audience in years, and never for one like this. Her eyes found Winters across the room. He was no longer smiling, but neither did he look displeased. Instead, he watched her with an intensity that suggested he was reassessing everything he'd assumed about her. An older man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses approached the piano. "That was Chopin's G minor ballade, wasn't it? Magnificent interpretation. I'm Jeffrey Harlow, by the way." Lily recognized the name immediately. Jeffrey Harlow was the director of the City Symphony Orchestra. She had attended their performances whenever she could afford the cheapest seats in the upper balcony. "Yes, it is. Thank you," she managed to say, still catching her breath from the emotional exertion of the piece. "Where did you train?" he asked, genuine interest in his eyes. "City University? Then I was accepted to Eastman, but..." She hesitated, unwilling to share her personal hardships with this crowd. "I wasn't able to attend." Harlow looked intrigued. "Yet you play at a level that suggests advanced conservatory training. Fascinating." A woman in her 40s with a sleek bob and sharp eyes joined them. "I'm Nina Chen from the Arts Foundation." "We should talk." She handed Lily a business card. "Call my office on Monday." Before Lily could respond, more guests surrounded the piano, asking questions, offering compliments, some even requesting specific pieces. The atmosphere had transformed completely. The people who had come expecting to laugh at her were now treating her with respect, even admiration. Through the crowd, Lily spotted Grace, the event coordinator, staring at her with wide eyes. The other servers had paused in their duties, watching the scene unfold with undisguised amazement. Robert Winters finally made his way through the circle of guests. The room quieted as he approached. Everyone was curious about what he would say. This man who had clearly intended to embarrass a waitress only to have his plan backfire spectacularly. He stopped in front of the piano, studying Lily with new eyes. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" he said, his voice carrying in the attentive room. "I never claim to be anything I'm not, Mr. Winters," Lily replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "You assumed I couldn't play based on where I work. That was your mistake, not my deception." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Few people spoke to Robert Winters this way. To everyone's surprise, Winters laughed. A genuine laugh, not the condescending chuckle he'd directed at her earlier. "Touché. I did make assumptions." He raised his glass. "To Lily Reynolds, who has taught us all a valuable lesson about appearances tonight." The guests raised their glasses in response, and Lily found herself the center of attention in a way she'd never expected when she'd boarded the bus to Hillcrest Drive hours earlier. "Would you play something else for us?" Winters asked, and for the first time since she'd met him, the request sounded sincere rather than challenging. Lily nodded and turned back to the keys. This time she chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece she'd played at home the night after Winters had first offered her this job. Its gentle, luminous quality seemed perfect for this strange, unexpected moment in her life. As she played, she noticed Jeffrey Harlow speaking intently with Nina Chen in the corner. They both glanced her way several times, nodding as they discussed something in low voices. When she finished the Debussy, the applause was warm and appreciative. Several guests approached to introduce themselves, their manner respectful where before it had been dismissive or pitying. A young woman who introduced herself as a music journalist asked if she could interview Lily for a feature story. It was all happening so quickly, this shift in how these people perceived her. Just 2 hours ago she had been invisible to them, just another server in black and white, there to fill their glasses and clear their plates. Now they were handing her business cards, asking about her background, treating her like a peer rather than staff. In the midst of this surreal turn of events, Lily caught sight of the other servers watching from the edges of the room. She recognized the expressions on their faces, the same one she'd worn countless times while serving wealthy patrons who never bothered to learn her name. It was a stark reminder that the barrier between their worlds remained. Despite this momentary bridge, Robert Winters approached her again as the crowd began to disperse, returning to their cocktails and conversations, though many were now discussing the unexpected musical interlude. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I invited you here to make a point to my friends about people overestimating their abilities. I was clearly the one who underestimated you." Lily considered his words. The admission surprised her. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge his intentions so plainly. "Why me?" she asked. "Of all the people who serve you, why did you choose to try to embarrass me specifically?" Winters seemed to consider the question carefully. "Something about the way you carried yourself that night when I was rude to you. You didn't cower or get flustered. It intrigued me." He shook his head slightly. "That's not an excuse. It was a cruel game and I'm not proud of it." Before Lily could respond, Jeffrey Harlow appeared at her elbow. "Ms. Reynolds, if you have a moment, I'd like to discuss something with you." He glanced at Winters. "Privately, if possible." Winters nodded and stepped away. "Enjoy the rest of the evening, Lily. And for what it's worth, you've given me something to think about." As he walked away, Lily felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at his admission that he had indeed intended to humiliate her. Satisfaction that his plan had failed so completely. And underneath it all, a trembling excitement about what Jeffrey Harlow might want to discuss. Harlow led her to a quiet corner of the room. "I'll be direct, Ms. Reynolds. Talent like yours shouldn't be waiting tables. The Symphony has a scholarship program for exceptional musicians who've faced financial barriers. I'd like you to audition formally, but after what I heard tonight, I can tell you the outcome is all but certain." Lily stared at him, speechless. This morning she had been worrying about paying her sister's college application fees. Now the director of the symphony was offering her a path back to the life she'd been forced to abandon. "I thank you," she managed to say. "I would be honored," Harlow smiled. "Excellent. Nina Chen and I were just discussing the possibility of a joint program between the symphony and the Arts Foundation. You could be our first candidate." He handed her his card. "Call my office on Monday. We'll set everything up." As he walked away, Lily sat down heavily on a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the sudden turn her life had taken. All because Robert Winters had tried to embarrass her and failed. Sometimes, she thought, Humiliation transformed into opportunity when you refuse to be defined by others' expectations. The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Lily. After her unexpected performance, she found herself in a strange limbo, no longer just another server in black and white, but not quite a guest either. Grace, the event coordinator, told her she was relieved of her serving duties for the remainder of the night. But Lily wasn't sure what to do with herself instead. She drifted to the edge of the room, watching the party continue. Several guests nodded to her or raised their glasses in her direction. A few approached to ask more questions about her musical background. It felt surreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life. "You look like you could use this," a voice said beside her. One of the other servers, a young man named Alex, handed her a glass of water. "Thanks," Lily said, suddenly realizing how thirsty she was. Her mouth had gone dry during her performance and the surprising conversations that followed. "That was incredible," Alex said, keeping his voice low. "We were all watching from the kitchen. I've never seen anything like it." Lily smiled, still feeling slightly dazed. "Thanks. It's been a while since I played for anyone other than my sister." "Well, you showed them," Alex said with a grin. "Especially Mr. Winters. The look on his face when you started playing." He shook his head in admiration. Before Lily could respond, Nina Chen approached them. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, though her tone suggested she didn't particularly care if she was. Alex immediately stepped back. "No, ma'am. I was just getting back to work." He gave Lily a quick thumbs up behind Nina's back before disappearing toward the kitchen. Nina smiled at Lily, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "I meant what I said earlier. The Arts Foundation is always looking for exceptional talent that has fallen through the cracks. And you, my dear, are the definition of exceptional." "Thank you," Lily said, feeling oddly exposed under the woman's scrutiny. "Though I wouldn't say I fell through the cracks. I made a choice. My family needed me." Nina nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Which makes your story even more compelling. Tell me, if circumstances had been different, where do you think your career would be now?" It was a question Lily had avoided asking herself for years. The what-ifs were too painful. "I'd probably be finishing my graduate degree at Eastman," she said finally. "Maybe auditioning for orchestras or teaching." "And your ultimate goal?" "Every musician has one." Lily hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Performing. Not just in an orchestra, but as a soloist." "That was always the dream." Nina nodded as if confirming something to herself. "Dreams can be deferred, but they don't have to be abandoned. Harlow and I discussed something that might interest you." She glanced around. "Why don't we find somewhere quieter to talk?" She led Lily to a small sitting room adjacent to the main party space. Through the doorway, Lily could see the celebration continuing, but the sound was muffled in here. A wall of windows offered the same spectacular view of the city lights spread below. The Arts Foundation and the Symphony have been discussing a joint scholarship program for some time. Nina began once they were seated. Full tuition for musicians to complete their education, followed by a guaranteed position with the symphony for at least 2 years. Lily's heart began to beat faster, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd learned long ago not to get her hopes up too quickly. The sticking point has been finding the right candidate to launch the program, someone with undeniable talent but also a compelling story that would appeal to our donors. Nina smiled. "And then tonight you sat down at that piano. So I would be, what, the face of your program?" Lily asked cautiously. "In a sense, yes. You would receive the scholarship, complete your degree, and join the symphony. In return, you would participate in fundraising events, give interviews about the program, that sort of thing." Nina leaned forward. "But make no mistake, this is not charity. After what I heard tonight, I have no doubt you belong on that stage." Lily tried to process what she was hearing. It sounded too good to be true, a path back to everything she had given up, handed to her just like that. "What about my sister?" she asked. "She's still in high school." "I'm her guardian," Nina nodded. "Harlow mentioned your family situation. The stipend that comes with the scholarship should be sufficient to support both of you, and once you join the symphony, the salary is quite reasonable." Lily's mind raced with possibilities. Zoe could finish high school without Lily working double shifts. They could move to a better apartment, maybe even somewhere closer to the university. And Lily could finally return to the world she had loved and lost. When would this start? She asked, still cautious but feeling hope build within her. We could have everything in place for the spring semester, Nina said. You'd need to complete a formal audition, of course, but after tonight's performance, that's just a formality. Lily nodded slowly. I'd need time to think about it, to discuss it with my sister. Of course, Nina handed her another business card, this one with a personal number scribbled on the back. Call me on Monday. We can set up a meeting with all the relevant parties. As Nina stood to leave, the door to the sitting room opened and Robert Winters stepped in. He paused when he saw them. I apologize for interrupting, he said, his manner more subdued than Lily had ever seen it. Nina waved away his concern. Not at all. We were just finishing, she turned back to Lily. Monday. Remember. After she left, Winters stood awkwardly for a moment, then sat in the chair Nina had vacated. I've been trying to find the right words to say to you all evening, he admitted. I'm not accustomed to being so thoroughly proven wrong about someone. Lily studied him. In the restaurant and earlier tonight, he had seemed larger than life. The arrogant billionaire who thought his money made him superior. Now he just looked like a man uncomfortable with his own behavior. Why did you do it? She asked simply. Winters sighed. The honest answer? Because I could. Because people like me get used to having power over people like you, and sometimes we abuse that power without even thinking about it. He looked out at the view of the city. It's not an excuse. Just the truth. His frankness surprised her. She had expected more deflection, more of the smooth charm he had displayed at the restaurant. I heard Nina talking about the scholarship program. He continued. It's a good opportunity. Yes, it is, Lily agreed, though I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. Winters turned back to her. I'd like to help if you'll let me. Not with the scholarship, that should be based solely on your talent. But your sister. Nina mentioned she's still in high school? Lily nodded cautiously. I have connections at several good universities. When she's ready to apply, I could make some calls. Lily's first instinct was to refuse. She didn't want to be indebted to this man who had planned to humiliate her for his amusement. But she thought of Zoe, bright and hardworking, who deserved every opportunity. That's generous, she said finally. But why would you do that? Winters was quiet for a moment. Let's call it making amends. Or perhaps paying forward something someone once did for me. He stood up. Think about it. No pressure, no strings attached. As he walked to the door, he paused. The party will be winding down soon. I've asked Grace to arrange a car to take you home whenever you're ready, and your payment for tonight has been increased. It seems only fair, given the unexpected entertainment you provided. After he left, Lily remained in the quiet room, trying to process everything that had happened. Just hours ago, she had been a waitress struggling to make ends meet, with dreams she had carefully packed away. Now doors were opening that she had thought closed forever. She moved to the window, looking down at the city spread below. Somewhere down there was the tiny apartment she shared with Zoe, the restaurant where she had served countless meals, the bus stops she waited at in all weather. It was strange to look down on that life from this height, knowing it might never be the same again. The sound of applause from the main room drew her attention. The party was reaching its finale, with Winters making a closing speech thanking everyone for their generosity. Lily slipped back into the crowd, standing at the edge where the other servers watched. And before we conclude the evening, Winters was saying, I want to once again acknowledge the extraordinary talent we witnessed tonight. He gestured toward Lily, and heads turned to look at her. Sometimes beauty and brilliance come from unexpected places. If only we have the wisdom to recognize them. The guests applauded, many raising their glasses in her direction. Lily nodded in acknowledgement, feeling oddly disconnected from the moment. This wasn't her world, or at least it hadn't been until tonight. As the party began to disperse, Jeffrey Harlow found her again. I've spoken with the board president, he told her. We're all in agreement about the scholarship. It's yours if you want it. Thank you, Lily said, still struggling to believe this was real. I'll call your office on Monday. Excellent, Harlow smiled warmly. The symphony has been looking for someone like you, Lily. Someone who brings not just technical skill but genuine emotion to the music. That can't be taught, you know. It comes from life, from experience. His words stayed with her as she collected her things and found the car Winters had arranged. As she settled into the plush back seat, she gave the driver her address, feeling almost embarrassed to direct this luxury vehicle to her rundown neighborhood. The drive gave her time to think, to begin processing the whirlwind of the evening. By the time the car pulled up outside her apartment building, she had made her decision. She would call Nina and Harlow on Monday. She would accept their offer. She would return to the path she had been forced to abandon, but she would do it on her terms with her sister by her side, and without forgetting the lessons learned during her years of serving others. Those years had taught her humility, resilience, and the value of hard work, qualities that would serve her well in the competitive world of classical music. As she climbed the familiar stairs to her apartment, she felt lighter than she had in years. When she opened the door, she found Zoe asleep on the couch, textbooks still spread around her, just as she had been the night Winters first offered her this job. Lily smiled, gently covering her sister with a blanket. Then she moved to the old upright piano in the corner and sat down, her fingers finding the keys in the dim light. Tonight, for the first time in years, she played not with resignation, but with hope. And somehow the slightly out-of-tune notes of the old piano sounded, sweeter than even the magnificent Steinway she had played earlier that evening. Monday morning arrived, with golden autumn sunshine streaming through the small kitchen window. Lily sat at the table, coffee in hand, watching her sister eat breakfast before school. She still hadn't told Zoe about everything that had happened at the party on Saturday night. Somehow putting it into words might break the spell, turn the whole evening into nothing more than a strange dream. "You're quiet this morning," Zoe said, looking up from her cereal. At 17, she had their mother's eyes and their father's determined chin. "Did something happen at that fancy party?" Lily took a deep breath. It was time to share the news. Actually, yes. Something pretty incredible. She told Zoe everything, how Winters had tried to embarrass her, how she'd played the Steinway, the applause, the conversations with Harlow and Nina Chen, and the scholarship offer that could change both their lives. Zoe's spoon clattered into her bowl. "Are you serious?" "Lily, that's amazing." Her eyes widened. "But wait, what about money? We can barely cover the rent now, even with your double shifts." "The scholarship comes with a stipend," Lily explained. "Enough for both of us," they said. "And once I join the symphony, there's a regular salary. So you'd be able to play again? Really play? Not just on our old piano after your feet are killing you from waiting tables all day?" Lily nodded, feeling the reality of it sink in more deeply as she shared it. "Really play. Finish my degree, perform." Zoe launched herself from her chair and threw her arms around Lily. "You have to do it. You absolutely have to, but what about you? We'd probably need to move closer to the university. You'd have to change schools." "I don't care," Zoe interrupted fiercely. "You put your whole life on hold for me. You gave up everything when Mom and Dad died. It's your turn now." Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. She hugged her sister tighter. "We'll do it together. That's the only way I'd want it." After Zoe left for school, Lily reached for her phone. She had 3 calls to make, to Nina Chen, to Jeffrey Harlow, and to Lucielle to give her notice. She had already decided no matter what happened next, she was done waiting tables. She would find another way to support herself and Zoe if the scholarship fell through, but she couldn't go back to that life now that she'd glimpsed a path back to music. By noon, the calls were made, meetings were scheduled, and Lily felt herself standing on the edge of her new life, both terrified and exhilarated. The manager at Lucielle had been surprisingly understanding. "I always thought you were meant for something else," he'd said. "Good luck, Lily." 3 weeks later, Lily stood backstage at the city's grand concert hall, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She smoothed down the simple black dress she'd bought for the occasion, her first new dress in years. Tonight was the official announcement of the Arts Foundation and Symphony's joint scholarship program, with Lily as its first recipient. The event had drawn the city's cultural elite, donors, press, and music lovers. She was scheduled to play after the speeches, a demonstration of why she had been chosen. "Nervous?" Jeffrey Harlow asked, appearing beside her. In the weeks since the party, he had become something of a mentor, helping her prepare for her return to formal music education. "Terrified," Lily admitted. "It's been so long since I performed for a real audience." "You played for 80 of the most critical people in the city at Winter's party, and you captivated them," Harlow reminded her. "Tonight will be no different." Speaking of Winters, Lily spotted him in the wings across the stage, deep in conversation with Nina Chen. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod. Their relationship had evolved into something unexpected, not quite friendship, but a mutual respect built on their shared love of music and his genuine efforts to make amends for his initial cruelty. True to his word, he had made calls about Zoe's college prospects. Just yesterday, an admissions representative from a prestigious university had contacted them to schedule an interview. Months ahead of the regular application period. 2 minutes, a stagehand called quietly. Lily took a deep breath, using the centering technique her old professor had taught her. In the audience, she knew Zoe was sitting in the front row, probably fidgeting with excitement. Miguel from Le Ciel was there too, along with several other former co-workers who had pooled money for tickets when they heard about her performance. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice came through the speakers. "Please welcome to the stage the director of the City Symphony Orchestra, Jeffrey Harlow, and the president of the Arts Foundation, Nina Chen." Applause filled the hall as Harlow and Nina walked on stage. Lily listened as they explained the new scholarship program. Its mission to identify exceptional talent that had been sidelined by financial circumstances, and their commitment to making classical music more accessible and diverse. "Tonight, we are proud to introduce our first scholarship recipient," Nina said, her voice warm with genuine pride. "A young woman whose journey exemplifies both extraordinary talent and remarkable perseverance." This was it. Lily squared her shoulders and walked onto the stage, blinking slightly in the bright lights. The audience applauded politely, most of them strangers who had no idea what they were about to hear. After a brief introduction where Lily gave a condensed version of her story, her early training, the family tragedy that had forced her to set aside her dreams, and her years working in food service, she moved to the gleaming grand piano center stage. As she adjusted the bench, she caught sight of Zoe in the front row giving her a thumbs up. Behind her sister sat Robert Winters, his expression thoughtful as he waited for her to begin. Lily placed her hands on the keys. Tonight she would play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, a piece about struggle, darkness, and ultimately triumphant return. It seemed fitting. The opening chords resonated through the hall, building slowly like the dawn breaking after a long night. As the piece progressed, Lily felt herself disappearing into the music, letting it tell her story in a way words never could. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the concert hall. Lily stood overwhelmed by the response. She looked at Zoe, who was clapping and crying at the same time, at Winters, who was applauding with genuine admiration, at her former co-workers cheering loudly from their seats. This was just the beginning. Next week she would start classes, returning to the education she had abandoned. In the spring, she would begin rehearsing with the symphony. There would be challenges ahead, adjusting to academic life again, balancing practice with her responsibilities to Zoe, navigating the competitive world of classical music. But tonight, standing on this stage with the applause washing over her, Lily knew she had found her way home. Later, at the reception following the performance, Lily found herself the center of attention in a way she'd never experienced. Music critics wanted interviews, donors wanted to meet her, and fellow musicians wanted to discuss her interpretation of Rachmaninoff. "You were amazing," Zoe said when they finally had a moment alone, stealing appetizers from passing trays just like they used to do at Le Ciel's staff meals. "I knew you were good, but watching all those fancy music people freak out over you was something else." Lily laughed. "I still can't believe any of this is happening." "Well, believe it," a voice said behind them. Robert Winters approached, 2 flutes of champagne in hand. He offered them to the sisters, then noticed Zoe's age and quickly swapped hers for a glass of sparkling water from a nearby table. "You've earned this moment, Lily, all of it. Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for tonight, but for the calls you made for Zoe. The admissions office contacted us." Winters shook his head. "I only opened a door. She'll walk through it on her own merit." He looked between the 2 sisters. "You know, I've been thinking about what happened at my party, how I misjudged you based on your job." "It happens more often than you'd think," Lily said. "I'm sure it does, and I'm sure I've been guilty of it more times than I care to admit." He paused. "That's why I've decided to expand my company's scholarship program to include service industry workers seeking education in any field. Your story made me realize how much talent goes unrecognized simply because of circumstance. Lily stared at him in surprise. That's incredible. It's the least I can do. Winters raised his glass. To new beginnings, and to the extraordinary music we might have missed if a certain waitress hadn't been brave enough to sit down at my piano. They clinked glasses, and Lily felt a sense of closure. What had begun as an attempt to humiliate her had transformed into an opportunity not just for her, but potentially for many others like her. As the evening continued, Lily found herself by the windows looking out at the city lights. From this height, they reminded her of the view from Winter's mansion, but tonight she didn't feel like an outsider looking down at a life she couldn't access. Tonight she was exactly where she belonged. Jeffrey Harlow joined her. "The music director wants to discuss featuring you as a soloist next season," he said without preamble. Tonight's performance convinced him. Lily's breath caught. A featured soloist position usually took years to achieve. "That's out fast," Harlow smiled. "Talent like yours doesn't come along often. When it does, we'd be fools to wait." As he walked away, Lily remained by the window, overwhelmed by how completely her life had changed in just a few weeks. From serving drinks to wealthy patrons to being offered a soloist position with the symphony, it was beyond anything she could have imagined. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Zoe. "Looking older and wiser than her 17 years? You know what Mom used to say?" Zoe asked quietly. "That music always finds its way back to those who truly love it." Lily put her arm around her sister's shoulders, tears pricking at her eyes. She was right. Together they looked out at the city below, the same city where they had struggled and survived, where Lily had carried plates instead of playing concertos, where they had held on to each other and onto hope during the darkest times. It was still their city, but now they would experience it in a whole new way. And somewhere in that vast sprawl of lights was an old upright piano in a small apartment, the instrument that had kept Lily's dreams alive during all those years of waiting. She would keep it forever, she decided, no matter where life took her next. A reminder of where she had been and how far she had come.